The history of the French bank under the Commune is interesting. Before the formation of the Council of the Commune, the Central Committee, not daring to seize the government treasuries, made a loan of 1 million francs in the bank. In the cellars of the bank were then stored in cash, securities, deposits, etc., about 3 billion francs. By seizing these sums, the Commune could have done its opponents enormous harm, but it had no knowledge of them. The Council of the Commune had attached to the bank as its observer commissary Belle, a good-natured old engineer whom the vice director of the bank, Dupleix, deceived by presenting him with false reports. But even those sums which Belle knew to exist, he ventured to touch with great caution for fear of causing a devaluation of the franc. Having made these fatal mistakes, and having isolated himself from the rest of France, by early May 1871 the Paris Commune was doomed, and attempts at belated and poorly organized attacks on Versailles had failed. Meanwhile, the Prussians had allowed a contingent of 130,000 French troops, composed mostly of prisoners and counter-revolutionary officers, into Paris. Led by General Magan, thugs from May 18th took one by one western forts of Paris, and on May 21st broke into Paris itself. Street bloody battles continued until May 28th, when they managed to suppress the resistance of the defenders of the last barricade of the Commune on the Rue Rampinat. The rebels were captured and shot in the Père Lachaise cemetery. In all, about 15,000 Paris Commune fighters fell in the streets fighting at the barricades. About the same number were shot. Heroically fell in battle such figures of the Commune: Florence, Vermorel, Delacluse, and Dombrowski, shot without trial Varlin, Millier, Rigaud, and even earlier Duval, on trial, Rossel and Ferret. In New Caledonia exiled Rochefort and Jourda. After the demise of the Commune, military field trials continued for a long time, and 13,000 combatants were sentenced to various terms of imprisonment, hard labor, or exile in the colonies. Queen Sanunda Cameritana was born in November 1860. Sanunda was the daughter of King Rama IV and one of his wives, Queen Payam Sakartikal. Following the dynastic customs of the Kingdom of Siam, Thailand, Sanunda was one of the 4 wives of her half-brother King Rama V. With Queen Sanunda, King Rama V had a daughter named Kanabhorn Bedratana, born on August 12, 1878. And she was expecting another child who would be a boy and therefore a future king. In 19th century Siam, there was a rule: no commoner could touch the queen on pain of death. It was a terrible taboo. On May 31st, 1880, Queen Sanunda and Princess Kanabhorn boarded a ship to move to the royal palace of Bang Ping Summer Palace, across the Chao Phraya River. But the small ship capsized, and the queen and the little princess fell into the water. Many courtiers witnessed their fall, but none of them came to their aid. Recall that if anyone touched the queen, even to save her life, he risked losing his own. This absurd taboo eventually caused their deaths. After this tragic event, King Rama V was completely devastated. Subsequently, the guard who was nearby and could have saved them but didn't was punished for over-enforcing the law. The king accused him of killing his wife and children and sent him to prison. After the tragedy, King Rama V abolished the silly taboo and a short time later erected a monument in honor of his wife, daughter, and future child at Bangping. In 1879, the first small Siemens electric train appears at the Industrial Exhibition in Berlin. An electric locomotive with 3 carriages moved at a speed of about 12 kilometers per hour along a railway track about 500 meters long. In 1880, engineer F.A. Paradsky tested in St. Petersburg a Conca car with a suspended electric motor. At the same time, Edison also began building a railroad in Menlo Park and constructing an electric locomotive. On the iron 4-wheeled chassis was mounted dynamo machine with a capacity of about 12 horsepower, which played the role of the motor. Electric current, delivered by 2 other Edison dynamos from the machine shop, was brought to the rails by underground cables. The 500-meter-long railroad track was laid in a loop winding around the mountain. The light rails were bolted to sleepers lying directly on the ground. Despite the short distance, there were several large slopes and unsafe curve along the way. 3 cars were attached to the electric locomotive. 1 open car, 1 freight car, and 1 jokingly dubbed Pullman, and used by Edison to test the electromagnetic braking system. On May 13, 1880, this railroad track was opened. Madcroft tells how all the young men from the laboratory made a party of it and climbed into the cars with the intention of going for a ride. All went well at first, but something turned out to be amiss, and they had to hand the electric locomotive over to the workshop to rework the mechanisms. This went on for some time. Tests revealed all sorts of faults. As always, Edison rose to the challenge and overcame one problem after another. Soon his electric locomotive was working properly. Technical journals and the daily press wrote extensively about Edison's electric railroad, and numerous visitors arrived in Menlo Park, including many engineers and railroad company directors. All the visitors were eager to learn about and experience the new mode of transportation. This electric railroad was in operation throughout 1881. The capitalists, for the most part, did not understand or appreciate the possible role and importance of electric railroads. The electrification of streetcar lines did not begin until many years later. Edison's conviction, however, was not shaken. He expands and deepens his experiments, takes a large number of patents, including for the contact part with trolley wire, which found further application in electric streetcars. All this speaks eloquently of Edison's technical and scientific foresight. Menlo Park's first electric railroad was destroyed and now no longer exists. But the first electric locomotive built by Edison has been preserved and is located at the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. 1891, an iron lighthouse by the Canton River. South China. 1904, portrait of the family of Thomas A. and Margaret Dillon. Virginia native Thomas A. Dillon and his wife Margaret, a native of Newton, Massachusetts, pose in the parlor of their home at 4 Dewey Street with their children Thomas, Margaret, and Mary. The poster on the wall commemorates President Theodore Roosevelt's visit to the Worcester Agricultural Fair in 1902. The photographer of this image, William Ballard of Worcester, Massachusetts, did not have his own studio and took photographs of clients in their living rooms, gardens, and patios. The photographer left behind more than 5,400 glass negatives. Of particular interest are portraits of Negro families who lived next door to him in the Beaverbrook neighborhood, taken between 1900 and 1912. The people in these pictures are of the new, free generation, but one must realize that virtually all of them were children of slaves. Many of them moved to Worcester from the South. After Trotsky was arrested on December 3, 1905, Parvis was also arrested in 1906 and spent several months in the Peter and Paul Fortress. In the fall of 1906, together with other members of the executive committee, he appeared in a public trial that received a great public response. Unlike Trotsky, who was sentenced to life imprisonment in Siberia with deprivation of all civil rights, Parvis received only 3 years of exile in the Turkestan region, but, like his disciple, escaped on the way to exile, returning first to St. Petersburg and then going to Germany. Lev Deitch also escaped from Siberia. In the winter of 1906, he headed abroad to Switzerland. The photo shows a party of prisoners being sent into exile in the Turkestan region. The last group of political prisoners accompanied by a convoy team leaving the gates of St. Petersburg Transit Prison, 6 Konstantina Gradskaya Street, on August 2, 1906. In the center are Menshevik Lev Deitch in black hat and Alexander Parvis in cap, and teacher Rumiant Sev in cap and light jacket. Reapers, unknown author, 1906, Vologda Province. Public flogging according to Sharia law. Persia, Iran. 1910. 1912. Mongolia and photographs by Alexander Alexievich Lushnikov. Urga. Trade at the Bazaar. Townspeople watching the raising of bells on the bell tower of the Cathedral of the Holy Trinity, Trinity Petrovsky Cathedral on Trinity Square, restored after the fire. St. Petersburg, December 1913. On a Harley-Davidson, 1914. USA, riding a horse named Sweet Kiss, considered an outsider in the race and who had never won a race before, American rider Frank Hayes died of an instant heart attack right in the middle of the race. The horse, whose betting odds at the time were 20-1, won with the rider already dead. Ms. Frayling, the horse's owner, and other officials discovered this when they came to congratulate the unexpected winner. The winning horse has since never raced again, and its owner gave it a new name, Sweet Kiss of Death. Animals have a strong sense of death, and it probably made the horse run hard. Frank Hayes became the first dead jockey to win a race. The fateful race took place on June 4th, 1923 in New York City at Belmont Park Stadium. 18-year-old acrobat Bertha Maddock performs a very risky stunt, walking on a rope over a cage with wild lions. Los Angeles, USA, 1929. At Le Dôme Café, Montparnasse, Paris, 1930 to 1940. Photographer Emile Savitri. The first Soviet racing car. Gazielan, 1938 USSR. Victory Square, 1938 Novokuznetsk. German prisoners of war under escort of a Polish officer on a Warsaw street. 1939. A service of mounted librarians who delivered books to the most remote and inaccessible corners of Kentucky. USA, 1940s. A married couple at the San Juan de los Lagos Fair. In Mexico, 1940. It's Holy Week. This is how they represent the torment of Christ. It's not just women, but also a lot of very religious men. In general, the cloth on the face should be red with blood. A cactus with its needles pricking the breast is a symbol of Jesus' torture. A photograph of Guards Lieutenant Mikhail Kudryashov, 1917 to 1943, in the hatch of his KV-1C of the 6th Guards Tank Regiment. The officer was awarded the Order of Lenin for his participation in the Battle of Kursk, summer in 1943. In the winter of 1942, Reichsfuhrer Heinrich Himmler and SS General Gottloberger held a meeting with Hitler, where they proposed the formation of a Bosnian-Croatian SS division. Hitler approved the division project on February 10, 1943, and SS Obergruppenführer Arthur Fleps, a German born in Transylvania who had previously served in the Romanian army, was tasked with forming such a division. Since the majority of the division's fighters, 60%, were Bosnian Muslims, pork was excluded from their diet and they were allowed to recite the fivefold namaz. Catholic Croats and ethnic Germans of Yugoslavia were also recruited into the division. The division was retrained in the fall of 1943, and the German command staff under the command of SS Brigadefuhrer Hampel, who were sent to serve in the unit, trained the recruits rather rigidly, without taking into account their religious and national characteristics. There were numerous cases of manhandling. As a result, the division became famous for the only mutiny against the Reich in the history of the SS and in general in all German armed forces. The main initiator of the revolt was Ferit Janik. The rebellion was put down by military force. The instigators were shot, and the division was soon returned to the Balkans and used in operations against the Yugoslav partisans of Josip Broz Tito and for the capture and extermination of Jews, Gypsies, and Serbs in the independent state of Croatia in 1944. There, the Handjar Dagger division was involved in the most heinous atrocities against the Serbian population. That same year, most of the division's soldiers and officers defected to the Yugoslav partisans. From December 1944, in the battles in Hungary against the Red Army, it was practically defeated. In May 1945, the remnants of the division retreated to southern Austria and surrendered to British forces. Soldiers of the 13th Mountain Division of the SS Handjar, 1st Croatian, performing namaz. During the war, Clark Gable was an air captain and participated in combat sorties in a Flying Fortress bomber. Gable's squadron was based in Great Britain. By the beginning of World War II, Gable was not just a very famous actor. He had already won an Academy Award and was nominated for this award twice, including for the movie Gone with the Wind, 1939. Therefore, the leadership of the Army and even the U.S. government was strongly opposed to his participation in the war effort. However, Clark Gable used all his connections and his authority to become a gunner on a combat aircraft and took part in air raids on Germany. He managed to fly 5 combat sorties, but after his plane was badly damaged during the flight, his authority and connections have already used the studio Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and GM to bring the actor back from the front. In November 1943, Clark Gable was forced to return to the States, where he continued to film. Soviet soldiers at a campfire on Sakhalin during the South Sakhalin Offensive, August 1945. PRC, Hebei Province, the city of Sheh. Children of Soviet officers walking on the street. February 25, 1952. In Sheh, our instructors taught the Chinese to fly Soviet airplanes. In 1956, Thomas Fitzpatrick made a bet while intoxicated, stole an airplane from the Teterboro School of Aeronautics in New Jersey, and flew 15 minutes to New York City, landing in front of a bar. In 1958, he again stole an airplane and landed in front of a university building because the bartender didn't believe he had done it. Thomas Fitzpatrick was a sailor during the Korean War and a pilot. Summer, Sunday, Gerard Philippe and Brigitte Bardot. 1958. Our life in 1960. Independent for 3 years now. Ghana, the first African country to free itself from the colonial yoke, has just declared itself a republic. Times are changing. The morning is singing. But as always, these boatmen will face a terrible wave in front of the port of Accra, preventing them from entering the harbor. They are ready to do battle with it. Photographer Mark Rabu. Demonstration of mechanical arms at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, 1968. In Czechoslovakia in 1968, the Congress of the Communist Party of the Czechoslovak SSR declared a course of reforms that some leaders felt were long overdue. Decentralization of power, liberalization of the media, freedom of speech and movement, and other freedoms. The Soviet government headed by General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev did not approve of such uncoordinated reforms in a country of the socialist camp. In this regard, the USSR military developed an operation to bring troops of the Warsaw Pact countries into the country to suppress anti-communist protests and demonstrations. The operation was codenamed Danube. The grouping of Soviet troops included 26 divisions, which had a strength of 500,000 soldiers. Troops of the Precarpathian and Central Fronts, 5,000 tanks, were involved, as well as the 7th Division of the Airborne Troops. The grouping was commanded by General I.G. Pavlovsky. On August 21st, 1968, the troops entered the territory of Czechoslovakia by tank corps and occupied Prague, the capital of the Czechoslovakia. They were followed in convoys by infantry units and armored personnel carriers. These events left an indelible imprint on the photographs, which have become part of our complicated military history of Russia and other Warsaw Pact states. These photographs were banned in the USSR until 1986. Prague Spring was defeated. The resistance of the rebels was crushed. However, it was not without losses. On the Russian side, 11 people were killed, 87 wounded. On the part of Czechoslovak citizens, 108 people were killed and about 500 were wounded. On the photo, a Soviet T-62 tank crashed into a building on the main square, meeting at the All-Russian Theater Society dedicated to the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, at which all supported the Soviet troops. August 21st, 1968, Moscow. Construction workers watching a photo shoot. USA, 1970. Shah of Iran wipes tears, protruding due to tear gas, at President Carter's speech. Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. United States, November 15, 1977. Tear gas was used in front of the White House by police to disperse a demonstration by those dissatisfied with U.S. policy. At ADP 11207, 1979, Nikopol, Dnipropetrovsk region. Visitors admire the wreckage of 4 U-2 spy planes shot down by the Chinese People's Liberation Army. Beijing, 1980s. Soviet swimmers Alexander Sidorenko and Sergei Fisenko kiss after finishing first and winning gold and silver medals in the men's 400 meters at the 1980 Moscow Olympics. These could have been prison photos of any women in their daily environment. But the women in front of you are suicide bombers, and just hours, or in some cases minutes after the photos were taken, these women would be led out into the courtyard and executed. In the top photos, drug trafficker Dai Dungue, who has been sentenced to death, tries on her last clothes in which she will die, while handcuffed and legs shackled, carefully arranging the folds of her clothes on the mattress on which she will lie her last night before her execution. At bottom left, a guard feeds her lychee, Chinese plum. On the bottom right, the last meal, Ms. Dongue puts a bowl of soup on a chair. She will also have fries, a hamburger, and ice cream for dinner. These rare photographs offer a unique glimpse into the final moments of Chinese condemned men on death row. In a country that carries out more executions than any other, it's not often the details surrounding the death penalty are shown. An unidentified civilian photographer was given an unprecedented opportunity to infiltrate the No. 1 women's detention center in the industrial city of Wuhan in central China. This person took a series of photographs on June 24, 2003. However, the photos turned out to be so sensitive that the authorities banned them from publication. The government feared they would arouse sympathy for female prisoners. In the top left photo, He Xiaolin. She is the youngest of the condemned female death row inmates, flustered and excited. Top right. She is goofing around trying to squeeze into the new shoes she will wear at her execution. Bottom right, another female prisoner feeds Xiaolin national dumplings. In the last photo, He Xiaolin sits surrounded by guards and other prisoners and naively tries to distract herself and show that she's not scared at all by leaning her head against another female prisoner. The last wish of another suicide bomber, Li Juhua, at 10:15 p.m. on the night before her execution. Her neighbor, a female prisoner, writes down the last will and testament of the condemned woman. He Xiaolin and Ma Qingxiu, the condemned to death, and 2 other prisoners, play cards while the guards keep an eye on them. Everyone seems relaxed and carefree. At 6:07 a.m., before the execution, Qingxiu, center, gives her clothes to another prisoner to whom they fit. In choosing her last outfit, He Xiaolin is still a woman. She tries on a black top instead of white because she thinks white makes her look fat. Tough morning. In the first photo, at 7 a.m., the condemned are taken one by one to the firing yard to face death. In the second photo, Xiaolin goes first at the beginning of the general column. All death row inmates are escorted past members of the local community to the execution site. Today, 16 condemned men will be executed. Moments before she was shot in the back of the head, Xiaolin cried. She was the only one among the condemned who cried on this execution morning. The entire evening before the execution, she was nervous and prayed to the heavens to give her a chance at another life. After being led before witnesses and scrutineers, the guards led the convicts away, who were executed just a few minutes later in the standard way, by a shot to the back of the head. Up until that point, the pictures were never published anywhere. The photos and videos were kept in a special vault for the record. However, after 8 years, they appeared on the Hong Kong Phoenix TV channel. The photographer was allowed to be with Ma Qingxiu, Li Juhua, Dai Dongue, and He Xiaolin from 9 p.m. to 7:21 the next morning. The women were all convicted of drug transportation and sentenced to death.